The woman is lying on the driver's seat, sleeping. The top-notch autonomous driving system allows her to completely relax. As you can see, AI is gradually infiltrating every field. In the near future, the Spanish government plans to replace judges with AI software to effectively automate and depoliticize the judicial system. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez announced in the media that a historic referendum will be held to decide whether to officially introduce the VENT in major courts. This AI software, called VENT, will estimate the likelihood of a second offense by criminals to assist judges in deciding on probation or parole. Renowned Judge Carmen has been invited to evaluate this new program. Although the software estimates an 80% chance of recidivism, Carmen didn't follow the AI's recommendation and still decided to give the offender another chance. Alicia, the founder of VENT, stopped Carmen after the trial, hoping she could spare some time to talk. But Carmen replied that she didn't have time lately. "You can contact my assistant," she said. After being rejected, Alicia drove back to her company. On the way, the car radio was broadcasting news about the VENT. A former anti-corruption prosecutor believes that the current judicial system has many problems. The public believes that court procedures are slow and inefficient and are influenced by politics. Furthermore, they are severely disconnected from modern societal values. "We live in a complex, globalized society, but the courts remain stuck in the 20th century. Only by using AI systems can we effectively solve judicial issues." As the founder of VENT, Alicia didn't feel happy about this praise. Instead, she decided to cancel the press conference. Because Alicia believed the system was not ready yet, her partners didn't agree to the cancellation. How can we suddenly retract after making such statements? Moreover, it was previously agreed to launch the project first and then gradually improve it. This decision affects the jobs of many people. Behind it are the investments of financiers and various government decisions. Alicia alone cannot determine the project's fate. Partner Bryce made a harsh remark, saying that the board would not allow her to mess things up. But Alicia was equally determined. She would hold a board meeting tomorrow to announce the news. In the evening, Alicia drove home. The road was deserted. As Alicia turned into a bend, she nearly collided with an oncoming vehicle. The autonomous driving mode quickly avoided the accident, and the car veered to the side. Carmen woke up in the hospital. She had recently lost her child. The doctor believed Carmen's condition wasn't suitable for having children anymore. They hoped she would prioritize her health and think it through. Carmen left the hospital, burdened with thoughts. The electronic billboard by the roadside was running an advertisement for the Judicial Technology Transformation referendum all day. At this moment, a breaking news alert suddenly interrupted the broadcast. Alicia, the CEO of VENT, has died. The accident occurred just a few hours after the Prime Minister announced the judicial reform case. This news dealt a serious blow to the government's reforms. Carmen hurried home to search for related information online. She saw that 5 days ago, Alicia had sent a message that read, "I need your help to complete this project. Please call me. It's urgent." Carmen felt a sense of discomfort in her heart. The next day, her superior Elena called her in to discuss Carmen's case handling, saying that the number was below standard. The court needs to handle an average of 550 cases per month, but Carmen had handled fewer than 300 cases. Next year, the court hopes Carmen can handle double the cases. Elena also mentioned that, as long as Carmen accepted the assistance of VENT, reaching this goal wouldn't be a problem at all.
Ya me dijeron, un 82% de probabilidades de reincidir y le concedes el tercer grado.
Elena knew that Carmen didn't like VENT and asked if Peter from the Judge Association had contacted her. They planned to call on the public to vote against it at the referendum. Carmen rarely attended organizational meetings and had not heard about this at all. Elena introduced a judge named Avila to Carmen. Avila was assisting the Technology Transition Department in introducing VENT. He wanted to know whether Carmen would vote for or against it. Carmen didn't give a clear answer, just said she hadn't made up her mind yet. Avila understood. Giving judicial authority to machines isn't an easy thing for people to accept it. However, VENT has undergone many tests. In the past few months, over 100 judges have reviewed VENT, all coordinated personally by Alicia. It has become a very refined system. In addition, Avila mentioned that several years ago, Carmen had participated in a trial concerning Alicia, and that it left a deep impression on her. Although Alicia died unexpectedly, she valued Carmen's opinions greatly during her lifetime, so Avila hoped Carmen would join the plan to conduct the final round of reviews. It would only take 2 weeks in total. The court would grant Carmen a special leave. Currently, all the polls point to the same result. The pro votes will win in the referendum. If the polls are accurate, Spain will become the first country in the world to entrust a crucial part of its democratic system's judicial administration to AI. Carmen listened to the broadcast as she drove to Alicia's funeral. The funeral was held by the seaside. Partner Bryce was in charge of hosting it. Although this gathering was nominally a funeral, it was actually aimed at promoting the launch of Vent. Alicia's death had already brought Vent to wider attention. Carmen left the funeral and went to the research center. She met with the COO of Vent, Yago. He led her to the conference room to meet with the main development team. Carmen agreed to Avila's proposal and formally signed a confidentiality agreement. She was ready to begin the 2-week system testing. The entire testing process was quite straightforward. The CTO Sofia prepared a lot of case materials for Carmen and then to review simultaneously. Then they compared their approaches to the same cases and identified the differences. This allowed them to learn and improve alongside Carmen. After several case hearings, Sofia found that 90% of the judges interpreted the law the same way Carmen did. The software followed the same patterns. To be safe, Carmen requested Sofia to upload all of Vent's judgment data, whether it was criminal cases, labor disputes, or administrative lawsuits. She wanted to go through each one carefully. Sofia immediately went to help print the documents. Meanwhile, Carmen wandered around the research center. As she passed by Alicia's office, she discovered that she actually had access. But before Carmen could go in, Sofia came over with the printed materials and led Carmen to meet with President Bryce. They exchanged a few simple words before Bryce hurriedly left. After Alicia's death, he had become very busy. Additionally, with the recent establishment of the algorithm, the Judicial Committee was about to hold the final referendum. Yago repeatedly reminded her that Carmen's review was crucial for the referendum, because she had previously fought against the electric company. In court, she was highly respected in the judicial community. Moreover, Carmen's judgments were very meticulous, making it easy to help the system build learning models. In summary, Carmen was the best model for Vent. If she could vouch for Vent in Congress, it would definitely persuade the public. Yago also told Carmen that Alicia even mentioned her in her will. She hoped Carmen would work on the development of the new version of Vent. If the system didn't receive Carmen's professional endorsement, no one could launch Vent. Alicia was worried that something might happen to her and specifically stated this in her will. Carmen felt strange upon hearing this. What did it mean to be worried about having an accident? Could it be that Alicia's death had other implications? Regardless, the fate of Vent's launch rested in Carmen's hands. That evening, Peter from the Judge Association also came to visit. He wanted Carmen to understand that if the referendum passed, then Vent's judgments would no longer be mere suggestions. A week later, Congress would hold a hearing to discuss issues related to algorithmic justice. This would have a significant impact on public opinion. The Judge Association hoped Carmen could testify.
No tengo un criterio claro.
Carmen, no es momento de ser neutral. Tienes que posicionarte.
Peter lowered his voice to warn Carmen. She needed to be careful. Recently, there were reports that Alicia tried to prevent the software from being released. A fatal accident involving an autonomous vehicle had occurred. This accident was likely not that simple. After Carmen got home, she analyzed the cases judged by Vent and searched for interview videos of Alicia during her lifetime. In the video, the host asked a question that the public was most concerned about. If Vent were officially integrated into the judicial system, would human judges disappear? Alicia explained that judges would still be a part of the judicial system because the human perspective is indispensable. However, in today's judicial system, good judges often do not get promoted, and only those close to the centers of power rise smoothly. That's why we need Vent to separate judicial power from politics and economics, and make the entire system more transparent. Vent will establish a visionary mechanism with the help of judges to practice the procedures of judicial justice. In the past few days, Carmen analyzed the cases handled by Vent and found them almost identical to her own judgments. The only difference was that Vent worked much faster. Bryce and others believed the system was problem-free and wanted to officially launch it the night before the referendum, on the 15th. But Carmen kept thinking about Alicia's death. Although the court hadn't yet reached a conclusion about the accident, Vent must have prepared its judgment. She hoped Yago could show her the results, because this case was protected by a confidentiality order. Yago closed the office curtains and pulled up the satellite images from the day of Alicia's accident. The footage showed the oncoming car suddenly veering and stopping in a blind spot. When Alicia drove by, the autonomous system took over the steering wheel to avoid a collision, although it avoided a crash. Between the two cars, Alicia still crashed into the woods and lost her life. Yago said that this was the best possible outcome. At least the driver and child in the other car were unharmed. If the two cars had really collided, everyone at the scene would have died. The then's ruling on the autonomous driving system was based on moral calculations, choosing to risk Alicia's life to save the majority. After Carmen finished work, She returned to her car and unexpectedly received an email from an unknown source. It contained footage of Alicia arguing with Bryce on the day of the accident. It seemed Peter hadn't been making things up. Alicia had indeed tried to prevent the launch of that before the accident. Not long after, the court issued a judgment in the car accident case that was identical to then's ruling. It said that the Vincent Automotive autonomous driving system was based on moral algorithms and that forcing the car to evade was a reasonable judgment. Subsequently, a spokesperson for Vincent Automotive stepped forward to explain that, for the algorithm, everyone is equal, the value of each life is the same. They wouldn't choose to crash into civilians just because there were tech professionals in the car. The market interpreted this ruling as, AI decision-making possesses the best neutrality. In the upcoming judicial referendum, it further strengthened the arguments of those leaning toward voting in favor. The court also pointed out that this judgment was based on a statement from an engineer who proposed the concept of moral algorithms. This person was named Carlos Vida, the safety director at Vincent Automotive, and an expert in network security and artificial intelligence. Carmen had her assistant look up who Carlos's lawyer was. She wanted to talk to this person. In the meantime, Carmen didn't relax her scrutiny of Vent. Although their rulings on the cases were completely consistent, the sentencing for Defendant 1 and Defendant 3 differed. Sophia had explained that Vent could assess each suspect based on data from their personal profiles to determine different levels of sentencing. This data included social wellness, spending patterns, public engagement, and various factors like credit ratings. Each data point was weighted and calculated by the algorithm. Carmen wanted to see this calculation program, as it would influence the discretion of the judgments, but Sophia replied that she didn't have that authority. If you want to know, you'll have to go to Bryce. When Bryce learned of Carmen's intentions, he proactively explained that Vent values every individual, the potential impact on society in the future. Justice has never been equal. Vent must weigh whether a prisoner is worthy of parole. This is one of the original principles of the algorithm. It also explains why Vent might deny parole for certain individuals, because it can predict whether a person deserves a second chance. However, Carmen believed that everyone is equal before the law.
Alicia te admiraba. Pudo haber entrado en prisión, pero tú le diste una segunda oportunidad. Tente habría hecho lo mismo con alguien así.
Bryce didn't make the calculation program public, only saying that they would see each other in Congress. Soon, the day of the hearing arrived. The media filled the House of Representatives to capacity. Iago, as the spokesperson for Vent, was the first to present his views. He was neither a judge nor a legal scholar. The standard by which ordinary people measure the quality of a nation's judiciary is by assessing user feedback to determine service quality. If, during the judgment, human limiting factors could be eliminated, such as emotions, racial differences, gender, or class biases, the results would surely be more equitable. Judicial quality would also be transparent and efficient. And Vent can achieve this. And next, Peter from the Judge Association also presented his views as a representative against incorporating artificial intelligence. Peter pointed out that the judiciary has always been unpleasant, because it can control politics and economics, representing the last bastion of defense and the basic rights of citizens. This fortress is defended by over 5,000 honest judges, who are overwhelmed by a lack of resources and buried under piles of work, to dedicate themselves to the court. While certain investment funds in government departments use the excuse of improving efficiency and neutrality to conceal their true motives, which is to control the entire nation's judicial administration under the guise of artificial intelligence, Bryce certainly wouldn't take the blame for that. He countered Peter, saying that yesterday they heard a government official request the court to appoint a good judge to handle his case. Is this kind of unfair privilege the justice that you judges defend? It has been proven that wherever there is human-controlled justice, corruption will arise, and our then system can read the emotions of witnesses, sift through vast amounts of information, and analyze the behavior patterns of the opposing party, completely resolve asylum requests, parole requests, claims, work disputes, and various types of cases. The then system establishes models for the present, past, and future, including millions of judicial procedures from courts across the country. It can handle different cases simultaneously, and the time taken is far less than that of a civil servant in the Department of Justice. Can you imagine how much money we could save for our country by integrating Vent into the judicial process? Finally, it was Carmen's turn to take questions. She had fought against the electric company on her own and caused the Supreme Court to amend relevant laws, and this is something Vent will never be able to achieve, because the system is built on past data. It cannot interpret the law in a constantly changing society, nor does it have the ability to create new precedents. This system can only look back at the past, so Carmen believed that Vent was not yet ready. her suggestions undoubtedly dealt a significant blow to that. After the meeting, Yago said that they could delay all plans and could grant her access to the algorithm. Whatever you say goes, but that needs your endorsement. Carmen agreed to consider it. She got back in her car and activated the autonomous driving mode. She accidentally dozed off. Fortunately, Carmen woke up quickly. Alicia's accident made her unable to trust autonomous driving that night. Carmen went for a night swim at the beach. On her way back, she saw a suspicious man. Carmen quickly dove into her car. Just then, an unknown number called. When Carmen answered, she found it was Engineer Carlos. They arranged to meet at a parking lot near Highway S6 at midnight. Carmen drove to the location. She was anxious the whole way, fearing she might have an accident like Alicia's. Fortunately, she arrived safely at the parking lot. Carlos got into the passenger seat and said he had stated in an interview, "To the algorithm, everyone is equal. Every life has the same value. However, there are exceptions to this. All paid VIP users can receive priority for their lives in the event of an accident." This means that every Vincent car driven by Alicia would make the best decisions for her. But that night, the autonomous system clearly failed to do so. Carlos explained that 2 days before the incident, their server was attacked, and the exception settings for moral algorithms were deleted. However, Vincent Company deliberately concealed this. Afterward, Carlos carefully examined the accident and found a suspicious connection. He traced it back and confirmed that the connection came from that. After finishing, Carlos handed Carmen a note with the IP address of Vent written on it. He couldn't identify which computer the connection came from. If Carmen wanted to know the truth, she would have to rely on herself to investigate. After Carlos finished speaking, he left the parking lot. Carmen contacted her assistant to continue checking that IP address. Just after she hung up the phone, she noticed a car across the street starting up. Could this person have been monitoring her from the shadows? Carmen decided to catch it, wanting to see what the person inside the car looked like. The other car was also trying to evade her. Whenever Carmen got closer, it would speed up to gain some distance. Carmen recklessly accelerated, almost getting hit by an oncoming vehicle. She slammed on the brakes, shaken, and could only let the black car escape ahead. The next day, Carmen went to inquire about the network IP. Her assistant bluntly said that this didn't comply with court regulations. "You need to tell me which case this IP is related to." Carmen had to be honest. "I spoke with that engineer. Alicia's accident was not a coincidence. But I only have indirect evidence and need to clarify that IP." The assistant wouldn't risk his professional credentials. Carmen had to hire a hacker named Jesus to investigate. This hacker had previously been judged by then to have an 80% likelihood of re-offending. At that time, Carmen did not heed AI's advice and still gave Jesus a chance at parole, so he would definitely help with this task. From Jesus's account, it was clear that Alicia was already somewhat famous in the hacker community before developing that. She came from an open-source software community and was very active in designing collaborative governance tools. The group of hackers led by Alicia had always hoped to democratize everything. Unfortunately, the current Thent was far from its original ideals, seeking to concentrate power in the hands of a few. As they talked, they arrived at Bryce's residence. Jesus had discovered that this was the source of the IP address. He took out a large package of equipment to hack into Bryce's computer and successfully copied documents related to that. Among them was a file on Alicia, which showed she was operated on with a biosecurity system. This involved implanting a subcutaneous chip that could provide her geographic location at any time. By reading the program code on the documents, one could view Alicia's activity records and current location. Jesus handed Carmen a USB drive containing a copy of the files. He said he would call her after he finished studying the documents. The next day, Carmen received a call from Jesus. He said he had found evidence of the attack on the autonomous driving algorithm by then, but there were other leads he needed to discuss with her in person. They arranged to meet the next day. Early the next morning, something went wrong. Jesus was arrested for possessing child pornography, and Carmen, as the judge who disregarded Then's warnings and insisted on granting him parole, would certainly be besieged by the media. Even the parents of the victimized children were prepared to file a lawsuit. Moreover, her superiors had been monitoring Carmen. Aware that she had met with Jesus the night before, Carmen's actions were considered a violation of judicial integrity, so the court decided to suspend her from duty for the time being. The news that Jesus had sinned again was further confirmation of Center's abilities. The victory in the referendum was almost a foregone conclusion. Even Peter and his fellow judges had given up their resistance. Carmen was now fighting alone. She went for a swim at the beach to calm her nerves. Unexpectedly, the wind direction changed suddenly. pushing Carmen far out into the sea. She struggled until evening but couldn't find the right direction. She had to relax her body and float with the waves. Soon after, Carmen was washed ashore. Then she woke up in a hospital. During her days in the hospital, Yago became the new president of Vent. Bryce was found by the police to be implicated in the accidental murder of Alicia. He is now missing. As for the engineer named Carlos, he had surprisingly joined Vent a few days ago. It is said that he has known Yago for a long time. They worked together at the same company years ago. However, when Carmen spoke to Carlos at that time, he claimed he did not know Yago. Carmen realized that Carlos approaching her was a trap set by Yago. She immediately went to see Jesus and learned the documents they obtained from Bryce's home had all been taken away. The child pornography content didn't belong to Jesus either. It was Yago who intentionally had Carlos hand over the IP address to Carmen, leading her to investigate Bryce. The documents in Bryce's home must have been tampered with by Yago. He aimed to frame Bryce for Alicia's murder. Once this trouble was resolved, Yago would further use the child pornography to frame Jesus. This would not only prove the judgment event but also severely damage Carmen's reputation. It was truly a win-win situation. Unfortunately, Yago didn't know that Jesus had already given Carmen a copy in advance. The technicians would analyze the documents to prove that this murder evidence had been tampered with. And Jesus had previously mentioned that he found other leads. Alicia sent Bryce a memo shortly before her death. The title was then 3. At that time, Bryce promised to improve the system and launch it. They were in agreement on this matter. Carmen wanted to have a chat with Bryce. Although the police had no idea where he was, Carmen suspected that Bryce, like Alicia, had a geographic location chip implanted in him. Using this lead, Carmen indeed found Bryce. Unfortunately, the signal came from 45 meters underwater. Bryce had likely met with foul play. Carmen called the police, and a recovery team was dispatched. Sure enough, they retrieved his body from the seabed. At this point, there were only 48 hours left until the referendum. Carmen accepted an invitation from a television station to discuss with Yago. This conversation would have a significant impact on the referendum results. The host asked Carmen why she was voting against it. Carmen explained that supporting algorithmic justice meant handing the nation's judicial independence over to a multinational corporation. Moreover, the founder of Vent, Alicia, aimed to achieve judicial transparency through artificial intelligence, which is completely contrary to the values presented by Vent today. So Alicia wanted to stop releasing the software and was murdered as a result. Yago countered that the police had already clarified this issue, that Bryce killed Alicia in a power grab, which had nothing to do with not launching the software. Carmen pointed out that Bryce did not commit murder. He was framed with false evidence. Just moments ago, the police had recovered Bryce's body, and the biggest beneficiary of the entire case was Yago, who had taken the position of president of Vent.
¿Qué estás insinuando, Carmen? ¿Qué es lo que pretendes? Te acaban de suspender porque dejaste libre a un criminal y vienes aquí y tienes el valor de sentarte aquí y acusarme a mí de asesinato.
Carmen said that it was not her place to judge him. After saying this, she left the studio. Carmen knew that through this interview, public trust in Vent would completely collapse. The referendum results would also be reversed. The film ended here. The dense and intricate dialogue left viewers feeling dizzy. The script's core discussion on jurisprudence was also quite weak. How can a film include so many elements without focus? Although the main theme of the film is about humans and algorithms, the plot conflicts were too few. All the scenes were driven by dialogue alone, which severely affected the viewing experience. In summary, artificial creations can never surpass human control. The biggest takeaway after watching the entire film is to never buy a smart car.